Has anyone experienced something unplanned, unexpected today? Maybe traffic, out of coffee, impromptu meetings and phone calls? Huh? Thank you. Yeah, we confront the unexpected, the unfamiliar, the unknown every day. It's part of the human experience, right? Our lives are unscripted. And you know what we do? We improvise. We do. We make fast decisions based on our experience so we can accept, engage, pivot if we have to, and move forward. But when we suffer the effects of trauma, our brain essentially goes offline, meaning that our prefrontal cortex, which regulates our thoughts, actions, emotions with its extensive connections throughout the brain, it disconnects. And instead, our amygdala, our fear-based brain, our survival brain takes over. So now instead of us being in our natural state of connection, we go into a state of protection. And now the unfamiliar, the unexpected, the unknown is really difficult to process, to understand. And it can seem like a threat. And worse, we respond to it like it's a threat. And that might look like us verbally lashing out or physically lashing out, or freezing and getting so stuck in our own fear, or hiding behind music or addictions, or putting up a facade that everything is just fine, but it's just to keep people away. And this might be familiar through personal experience, with yourself or with people around you. But I think we know through headlines that this kind of disconnection can lead to devastating outcomes. So what do? How do we get our brains back online? How do we connect again so we can connect again? Improv. Yes, improv. Those short, spontaneous, sometimes hilarious games you have probably perhaps enjoyed watching on television or on stage. Improv. Now, improvisation, that is something we do every day of our lives as humans. But improv is a specific comedic art form. And with it comes a process that helps us practice accepting, engaging, and moving forward, solving for the unknown. When early on, when I first started with improv, it was amazing because so quickly I began to gain this trust that whatever situation I was in, I was going to be okay. And with every game I played, I felt like an onion, peeling off a layer of anxiety and self-doubt and paralyzing self-judgment. And this transformation carried over into all theaters of my life, personally and professionally. And I also felt, when I showed up to a rehearsal or a show, I felt a state change because after working all day, I'd show up frustrated, exhausted, just beaten down. But within moments, I felt better. I felt energized. And at the same time, early on, when I was doing improv, I was a social studies teacher, and I helped found my school's performing arts program. So my students, whether they were coming to an academic class or one of my arts classes, and these are teenagers, so they are coming in some pretty intense moods. But I didn't have to struggle through that to teach them, because within moments of doing an improv game or so, they too seemed transformed. They were engaged, ready to learn. They were even collaborating. So it became obvious very early on that improv was more than a comedic art form. There was something else going on. So when I had the opportunity, I co-conducted and co-published original research looking at improv and what was going on with the brain. And this did not involve professional improvisers, but teenagers who were suffering the effects of early childhood trauma. That's trauma that is repeated trauma that occurs between 0 and 7 years of age and usually involves the disruption of the relationship with the caregiver, perhaps through divorce or death or adoption, abuse, neglect. But now these teenagers are struggling with a multitude of mental health issues, like addictions, anxiety, depressions, relationship disorders, PTSD, and more. So using QEEG technology to help measure brain waves, we discovered that minutes of improv help to increase the functional connectivity of the brain. What's that mean? It means those teenagers did transform. It means the brain got back online. You see, they would show up to the pre-assessment and the improv class, literally armored up, protecting themselves. Some even looked like they were physically ready, You know, their head was down, shoulders were just clenched forward, their fists were clenched, you know, to just protect themselves. Some were lashing out verbally, others physically, some were hiding under hoodies, and a few had that facade, polite, sweet, fine, but it was just protecting themselves to keep you away. Here's a brain map. You see the bright and the dark colors. This is a teen that is struggling to pay attention, struggling to think, struggling to relax. But within minutes of improv, you see how the colors have cleared. This is a teen that is now better able to think, to focus, to relax, to engage. These same teens were now standing tall, eye contact, laughing, engaging with each other, conversing. Their brains were online. Now, it begs the question, how in the world does improv do that, right? Well, I mentioned improv has a process that helps us practice accepting, engaging, moving forward. And for those of you who are familiar with improv, you're familiar with its foundational rule of yes and. Yes, I accept your offer, and I'm going to add to it. Yes, I unconditionally accept the offer, the situation, the circumstances, and I'm going to validate it by adding to it. I'm going to engage with it. I'm going to move it forward. Yes, and. This rule frames every single interaction in every single game. Okay? Here's a quick montage of just a couple of the games that we used in the study, and it involved, well, like I said, here's a quick montage of a couple of games we used in the study. You're also going to see in this very short video Scott Kinnicky, who co-authored the study, as well as then Brian Knox, who helped with facilitation and the collection of data. All right, so check this out. See if you can see yes and in action. And the first game, it should be fairly obvious. Yes, let's design a new and improved jacket.
Yes, and let's make sure that it has self-heating.
Yes, and battery packs to charge our devices.
Yes, and let's make sure that it can inflate so you can go in the water.
Trees
Sometimes.
fall
Over.
when
They
are
hit
with
lightning.
a dragon swooped in and grabbed him and carried him away.
Yeah, look, I understand. The thought of doing improv can inspire fear. But when you actually do it, yes and creates a sense of safety. So much so that it sets the condition for our brains to get back online. You see, in the study, we saw an increase in coherence and a decrease in phase lag, which means we saw the prefrontal and the other areas of the brain activate, and the communication between them became more efficient. So now, instead of seeing something as a threat, someone would be more able to see the reality of the situation, what was actually being communicated to them. You see that, yes, it creates enough safety to shift us from that fear-based brain to one of connection again. And not knowing what's going to happen next, and instigates just enough uncertainty to make us slow down, pay attention, focus, understand. And you can see with those games that reciprocal yes and, it very quickly creates an attunement to each other. And we saw an activation of the sensory motor system, which included the mirror neuron system, which means these teens now had an increased capacity to express and experience empathy. And when words, with words and our expressive emotions through movement are not disassociated, but better integrated, we gain a better ability to not only communicate and understand verbally, but also non-verbally. And we saw the activation of the anterior cingulate. And this is the part of the brain that integrates our cognitive, our physical, and our emotional functions. So now, instead of feeling stuck in whatever state we're in, we gain flexibility to move to a better state in order to function at our best. You see, yes and creates the safety, the attunement, and the flexibility to get our brains back online. Now, not too long ago, I was co-leading a pirate treasure hunt for families. It was a family activity. And they had to solve about 7 clues, and we get to the end. And one of the teens really got emotionally upset and was getting very physically expressive, so much so that his mother was trying to hold him, restrain him, because he thought we were done and we should have the treasure. So I very quickly walked over to him and I said, yes, we solved all 7 clues, and that brings us right here. And if we answer this one more question, we'll have treasure. And he looked and he said, okay. And he re-engaged. Yes, and. Yay. Now, not too long ago, I was at a hospital trying to get a loved one released, and I had to meet with a person who was acting as the entire social work and casework department, one person, and I waited days to meet with them. And when they finally came over, now I knew this person was going to be stressed and overwhelmed, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, okay, we're going to have to yes and. We're going to have to yes and. Yes, we're going to listen. I'm going to be focused. Yes. And she came over and she said, so you want to take the patient home today? And what I didn't take into account was how stressed and overwhelmed I was. Because when I opened my mouth, I said, no. And what I wanted to say was, no, I want home care arranged first, and then we can take her home today. But I said no, and she heard no. And she instantly, upon hearing that, just threw the papers in the air and said, well, I don't even know what I'm doing here, and hurried away. It took days to meet with her again. What could have been accomplished if I'd simply been able to say, yes, we want to take her home today, and we need our home care arranged first, please. Look, when someone's having a hard time, how we respond to them can be the difference between them engaging with us or them going into a state of protection. And it's impossible to know who is struggling, when they're struggling, how much they're struggling, and sometimes to even know how much we're struggling in the moment. But one of the fastest and easiest ways to get our brains back online is improv. So the next time you're in a classroom or a conversation, a meeting, or a meltdown, try responding with yes and, or by playing a couple of improv games framed by yes and. Because we're humans. We know how to solve for the unknown. We improvise. So let's get our brains back online so we can. The solution's improv, and X equals yes and. Thank you.